What's up, everybody? Is Johni Broome the best player in college basketball? Is Alabama in danger of hanging on as a one seed? And has John Calipari resurrected Arkansas's tournament chances? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers who are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's at FanDuel.com. All right, here's what we got laid out for you guys on the show today. We're going to be talking a lot of SEC hoops, kind of recapping the weekend that was. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be intermingling. We'll still be talking a lot of football. We'll get into our spring preview series, or continue that, rather. We did a little bit on Alabama last week, talking about the quarterback battle. We'll do Tennessee this week and knock out a few others, but we'll be intermingling some basketball talk as well. Because, look, the SEC has, frankly, just been dominant on the basketball front. And so a lot of you people, or a lot of you, are still very interested in it. And I even saw Dan Orlovsky tweeted yesterday, is the SEC a better basketball conference than a football conference right now? And so it's up for debate. And so I figured we would spend some good time talking SEC basketball. And so let's dive into it, recapping the weekend that was. And we got to start with the number one Auburn Tigers. Auburn defeated Georgia at Neville Arena on Saturday, 82-70. And Johni Broome just continues to add to his incredible Auburn career with a marquee milestone. He became the 12th player in Auburn basketball history to reach the 1,500-point milestone. He scored 31 on Saturday with 14 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks as Auburn improved to 25-2 overall, 13-1 in the brutally tough SEC. With Saturday's dominant performance on the box score, Broome has now 17 double-doubles this season for Auburn. He is now 1 double-double away from tying Auburn's all-time single-season record, which is held by Mike Mitchell. He had 18 back in the 74-75 season. So Johni Broome entering historic category, obviously, and he's got a great chance to break that double-double record. I mean, you still got a couple of weeks of games left. One more double-double ties it. 2 more will set the record and will pass Mike Mitchell. So the question's being asked nationally, is Johni Broome the best player in all of college basketball? And here's basically where we are right now. Cooper Flagg at Duke is still considered, he's the odds-on favorite still. The Duke freshman is averaging 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists a game. He's been outstanding, but Broome is not far behind. He's the second best odds at plus 120, and behind him, it's Purdue's Braden Smith, and he's a long shot at this point. So it's a 2-horse race between Flagg and Broome, and Flagg is still the favorite, but Broome has some work, some room still left to show what he can do and maybe change some of those East Coast voters' minds. Auburn head coach Bruce Pearl said after the game, Broome should be the National Player of the Year. After the win over Georgia, Pearl said, well, that's why he's the Player of the Year. Unbelievable poise. He plays at a great pace offensively, and the fact that he's patient, calculating, and the fact he attacked the rim like he did in this game so much, I mean, that was the biggest difference at the end of the day. We had 4, and they didn't, and 4 played pretty damn good tonight. Now, 25 games this season, like we said, Broome averaging 18.5 points a game, 11 rebounds, 3.5 assists. He's shooting 50% from the field, 30% from three-point range. Defensively, he has 2.6 blocks per game. And this is his 3rd season playing under Bruce Pearl at Auburn. Prior to that, he spent 2 seasons at Morehead State. And on his resume now, he's a 2-time All-SEC selection, 2-time All-OVC selection. He's the SEC Tournament MVP. Will he add Naismith Player of the Year award to that list? We will see. But in the game against Georgia, Broome scored 31 points and 14 rebounds, 4 assists. It was the most points and 6th most rebounds he's had in any individual game this season. He led all players in both scoring and rebounding in the Georgia game. And look, he would have my vote but we do cover the SEC here, so we're a little bit biased. After the win, Bruce Pearl talked about how tough this road is getting for Auburn. He said, we're clearly getting everybody's best shot. We are. It's great because to the victor go the spoils. A victory over Auburn with our math could really get somebody off the bubble and into the tournament. That's what these kids are playing for. We recognize that, and we're going to get that again Wednesday night against Ole Miss. Our guys are used to this. I think the other thing, it's a combination of having a bunch of older guys. They're starting to see the end of this thing in the regular season, and they don't want to waste opportunities. I think sometimes that keeps them engaged and continuing to work. Obviously, we're trying to play for championships. Bruce Pearl, like you mentioned, Auburn will host number 24 Ole Miss inside Neville Arena on Wednesday night, and then things only get tougher from there. They will travel to Rupp Arena to face Kentucky. They'll stay on the road to take on Texas A&M. And then the season finale against Alabama. I mean, it still is pretty tough. Tough road to hoe here for the Auburn Tigers. But Johni Broome, fantastic season, and he only continues to impress night in and night out. All right, elsewhere in the SEC, Mark Sears, he torched the Kentucky defense as the fourth-ranked Crimson Tide snapped a 2-game losing streak against the Kentucky Wildcats, dropping 30 points to lead the Crimson Tide to a 96-83 victory at Coleman Coliseum. It was a little over a month ago. Sears scored 16 of his 24 points in the second half to lead Alabama to a win over Kentucky, and the Wildcats could not slow him down. Sears made all 11 of his free throw attempts while adding 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals to his 30-piece. He was backed up by Aiden Holloway, who came off the bench with 19 points and 4 rebounds. Crimson Tide shot 52% from the field, and Kobe Bray was the only Kentucky player to reach 20 points. So the Wildcats were just 9 of 26 from three-point land. And Kentucky is now 4-6 in their last 10 games. And that's get started with their first loss to Alabama and Lexington. Wildcats fall to 18-9 overall, 7-7 in the SEC. Alabama, they improved to 22-5, 11-3 in the league. And they still have a tough road to go here. Elsewhere, Florida and LSU, they were locked into a tight battle in Baton Rouge, but a dominant run late led the Gators to a 79-65 win and now on a 6-game winning streak. But going into halftime, LSU was actually up 37-31 against the number 2 team in the country. Gators were not shooting it well, but they came out and shot 55% overall after halftime, went 3 for 8 from deep, and their defense really stymied LSU in the second half. Ruben Chinyelu led 5 Gators in double figures with 19 points, 13 rebounds, and a double-double. Florida is now 11-3 in SEC play. And, man, they have been very, very impressive this season. Give them a lot of credit for the year they're having. Todd Golden has done a fantastic job. So tip of the cap to them. Rick Barnes over Tennessee, joined an elite coaching group with his win over Texas A&M. The Vols in another top 10 matchup. It was number 6 versus number 7. It was Tennessee's 4th game of the season against a top 10 opponent. And it was Rick Barnes' 50th career win against an AP top 10 team. The Vols won 77-69. According to Cole Kublik, that makes Barnes just the 11th coach in Division I history to notch at least 50 top 10 victories. Of course, Barnes has been coaching a long time, but with Saturday's win against the Aggies, Tennessee now 2-2 against top 10 teams this season. The Vols lost on the road to Florida and Auburn, but beat Florida at home. Alabama, Tennessee's opponent on March 1st, still ranked and likely to give the Vols a 5th top 10 opponent. Oklahoma, they halted their 5-game losing streak with a big win over Mississippi State, beating them 93-87. It was a much-needed win. Oklahoma tried to keep their NCAA tournament hopes alive. They led by 14 with 3 minutes to go, but Bulldogs made a run, made it a 3-point game. Oklahoma freshman guard Jeremiah Fears, one of his best games of the season, 27 points, 10 assists. And Oklahoma now 4-10 in SEC play, but still alive on the bubble. That non-conference play, they had wins over Michigan, Arizona, Louisville, and that is helping their resume. But Oklahoma's still going to need a couple more nice wins to feel good on Selection Sunday. They will get Kentucky at home on Wednesday. Disappointing loss for Mizzou. They were riding a heater. Well, we'll get to them in a little bit. Vanderbilt, they take down Ole Miss for their 3rd home win over a ranked opponent this season. Commodores took down number 24 Ole Miss All three of Vanderbilt's home victories over ranked teams this season have been on Saturdays. They beat Tennessee, Kentucky, and now Ole Miss, all in Nashville. Mark Byington saying post-game, our guys have been fighting all year. Sometimes results haven't been there, but every game we're competing, it's a brutal league. Vandy improves to 18-9 overall, 6-8 in the tough SEC. John Calipari in Arkansas, they have continued their back half of the season improvement with a 92-85 win over number 15 Missouri. Cal saying his team had gotten better. He said they're trying to figure out who they are. It's hard to be aggressive when you're in your own space. When you're in our space, you can go do whatever you're doing. You know how we want you to play. Go play. You're going to make mistakes. Next play. Keep going. We had guys that were either trying to play perfect or playing not to lose. He said if you play prevent in football, it prevents you from winning. In basketball, when you're playing not to lose, 8 out of 10 you lose. You have to play to win. And so Arkansas, they had lost 3 or 4 coming into that one on Saturday, but all those losses were to top 10 teams, and Calipari credited his team for the growth they have had over the course of SEC play. He said these kids, they are resilient. Razorbacks come a long way over the last couple of weeks. They're now trending to be a tournament team. Calipari said, look, everybody watching this team knows we are only getting better. Now we just got to finish. Wednesday, Arkansas will have a chance to build on that. They will take on Texas. Disappointing loss for Mizzou. They were riding a heater. They had won 3 in a row, including a big win over Alabama just last week. But Mizzou got to figure things out. Meanwhile, South Carolina, they got their first SEC win of the year, beating Texas Saturday night, 84-69. Disappointing loss for Rodney Terry's crew. Texas drops to 16-11 overall, just 5-9 in SEC play. Freshman Trey Johnson dropped 29 points for the Longhorns, but we know Carolina not likely to make the tournament at 11-16, but Texas, they really need to clean things up down the stretch if they want to punch their ticket. All right, so who is on the bubble? Who is a virtual lock to make it? We will explore Joe Lunardi's bracketology coming your way next. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Quick minute here for our friends at Prize Picks. And look, March basketball is here, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and it keeps every game exciting. You could build your lineups, and this week you can look at any players that they have on their NBA, college, whatever you want to do. You can get in on the more than or less than, and you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. It takes that long to get into it, and when you win, your money will hit your account in as little as 15 minutes, no waiting around. Prize Picks even offers weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even more value. Go download the Prize Picks app today. Use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Get $50 instantly after you play your first lineup. It is Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, we're along here, Locked On SEC. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. We'll get into a little bit of football conversation here in just a little bit, but we're going to stick with a little SEC basketball news as College GameDay. They're heading back to the SEC for their first show of March. ESPN announcing on Saturday morning that the flagship pregame show will originate from Gainesville this weekend as Florida will host Texas A&M in a big-time showdown. Entering the weekend, Florida was ranked number 2 in the AP poll, while A&M was number 7, and we'll see where they end up being ranked this week. Florida should still be in that 2 spot, but this will mark the 3rd time this season that College GameDay will visit an SEC campus for a men's game. They were on the plains for Tennessee Auburn back on January 25th, and then just, 2 weeks ago, they were at the Iron Bowl basketball in Tuscaloosa. This will be the first time this season that either Texas A&M or Florida have been showcased on College GameDay. Now, Florida has hosted GameDay on 5 previous occasions, but the most recent, you got to go all the way back to February of 2017 when the Gators hosted Kentucky in a top 25 matchup, and Florida won that game in a blowout fashion. So congrats to the Gators. Big time getting it back there on campus there with Florida. Of course, Billy Donovan, all those great years at Florida, had game day there, and Todd Golden doing his duty to try to get them back there. All right, let's get to Joe Lunardi. He has updated his bubble projection following Saturday's games. On Sunday, he came out with his latest NCAA tournament field of 68. And here's how it shakes up. On the bubble, Arkansas and Oklahoma, they both picked up big top 25 wins in SEC play on Saturday to sneak into the field in the last 4-in section. Vanderbilt also got a big win over Ole Miss to try to improve their standing. Now, Texas, that was a pretty damaging loss to South Carolina. Lunardi gave some thoughts on the top of his bracket. Interestingly, Duke overtook Alabama for the number 2 overall seed, although both remain on the top line. 4 of the top 5 seeds overall in the field are SEC teams: Auburn, Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee. Duke is the lone team from outside the SEC currently projected as a 1 seed. So if you guys are watching the video right now, if you're listening to the podcast, whatever, on YouTube, we've got the Lunardi's notes up there that he tweeted out yesterday. And again, Auburn is the number 1 overall seed, Duke as the second 1 seed, Alabama as the third 1 seed, and Florida as the fourth 1 seed. He moved Houston up, gave them a lot of credit after their home win over Iowa State. So he's got Tennessee as 5th, so they're a 2 seed, Houston as a 2 seed, Iowa State as a 2 seed, Michigan State as a 2 seed. And you get to the 3 seeds, and he's got Texas A&M and Kentucky in there. Now, Kentucky, a little bit of a question mark on if they can hang on to that 3 seed. And then Bubble Watch. Last 4 buys, he has Texas and Vanderbilt in that group. Last 4 in, he has Oklahoma and Arkansas in that group. And then in the first 4 out, he has Georgia in that grouping. So a chance for Georgia, if they could do some damage here down the stretch, maybe they can jump into that, last 4 in or last 4 buy category. But as far as the conference bids go, he still projects the SEC with 13. It's just interesting how this has worked out. I think 2 weeks ago, Arkansas was on the outside looking in, Georgia was in. Now it's flipped. Arkansas, he's got his in, he's got Georgia out. So, and again, Oklahoma's got to still do some work here to make sure that they get a bid. But as a Sunday slate, Joe Lunardi points out he thinks Indiana has a chance to move closer to the field with a win over Purdue. Hoosiers currently in that next 4 out category. Selection Sunday is 3 weeks from yesterday. So we got some time to still kind of figure this thing out. But it does feel like, I think he noted it last week that basically Auburn, he gave a 2-loss cushion. He's like basically saying Auburn could lose 2 more games and still be a lock to be the number 1 overall seed. But that's just a lot of respect for Auburn, Alabama, and Florida. I mean, Alabama just lost 2 games here in the last week plus, and he still has them as a 1 seed. So granted, one of those losses was to Auburn and another one to a good Missouri team. But Auburn, Alabama, and Florida all hanging on to 1 seeds. Tennessee in as a 2 seed. Kentucky and A&M as a 3 seed. So we'll see as Selection Sunday gets a little bit closer how all this stuff breaks down. I was reading on 3. They were kind of predicting what's going to happen today. And depending on what time you guys are listening to this, the AP poll predictions, they do think Auburn will stay at number 1, of course. They held on to the top spot, went 2-0 in the week with a win over Arkansas and a win against Georgia. So they will stay in there. They do project Florida will stay as the 2 seed. They hold serve, beating Oklahoma convincingly, and then coming back to take LSU on the road. They are projected to hold that lead over Duke for the number 2 spot in the AP poll. They project Tennessee will go from 6 to 5. They got to rest through the bye week, setting up for a strong performance and a road win against Texas A&M, which could bump them up a spot. They moved Alabama down from 4 to 6. They said Alabama dropped a second straight game, falling against Missouri in the midweek, but did bounce back in convincing fashion against a top 20 Kentucky team, which should boost them, give them a little bit of favor instead of falling far. And then the rest of the way, they projected A&M to slide from number 7 to number 11, Missouri to go from number 15 to number 16. They were holding Kentucky firm at number 17. They didn't think they would slide very far. And then Mississippi State, they dropped from 21 to 25. And then projected to drop out is Ole Miss, who was ranked 24th last week, who took a loss. And so that's just kind of what they're projecting is going to happen in the AP poll today. Again, by the time you're listening to this or watching this, the poll may already be out. And yeah, so you already know where those teams are ranked. But again, SEC getting a lot of love and getting a lot of people kind of giving them a pass, saying like, look, we get it. Your conference is tough. Losing these quad one games, we're not going to ding it. We're not going to hurt you in the standings or the rankings and drop you very far. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Coming up next, we're in a couple of football notes before we call it a show. That's coming up in just a sec. Hey, when the games tip off, NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Of course, they've got college action up there for you as well. If you want to bet on SEC, college hoops, you can do that with FanDuel. You can place live bets throughout games. Even if you miss the opening tip-off or if you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Of course, FanDuel's live betting feature will keep every moment of the game exciting, whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or hoping they hit some clutch threes. You will never miss your chance. The app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly over at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers, if you've never bet with them before, you can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Go make every moment more with FanDuel. They are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, continue on here. Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And switch gears here. We're talking a good bit on SEC hoops. There's some football nuggets out there to get into, so let's dive into it. And we'll start over at Georgia as Jared Curtis, 5-star quarterback and major SEC target, has named his 2 finalists. He is from Nashville. He's considered the number 2 player in the class of 2026, according to 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. And he has named Oregon and Georgia as his 2 finalists. According to On3, Curtis was set to take official visits to Auburn and South Carolina, but those have been canceled as he is zeroing in on Oregon and Georgia. And look, it makes sense. South Carolina's got what they just brought in Aaron Noland. Auburn's doing pretty good. They just brought in Deuce Knight. Granted, this is for next year's class of 2026, but it feels like he's going to end up at Georgia, right? We will see. Curtis previously committed to play at Georgia back in March, but in October he announced he had decommitted, reopening his commitment, and but Georgia's remained right there at the top, and they are one of his finalists. Of course, Dan Lanning, the former Georgia DC, is the head coach over at Oregon, so a little bit of bragging rights there, whoever wins this battle between Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning. But Curtis will be in Eugene the weekend of June 6th. He'll follow that up with an official visit to Athens the week of June 13th. So we'll see if he makes a decision somewhere after those visits. In other football news, over Tennessee, we know now they are going to receive a hefty buyout from Nebraska for their canceled football series. That came out just a couple days ago. Nebraska canceling the series with the Vols for a home-and-home series in 2026 and 2027. Danny White took to social media to call him out and say, hey, it was their decision. And the Vols will have to find replacement opponents for the 26 and 27 seasons. But according to Brett McMurphy, the Vols are going to get a nice payday from the Huskers. The price of breaking the contract is $500,000 per game. So that's a total of $1 million they will get from Nebraska. So shout out to Nebraska cutting off that game, but Tennessee going to get $1 million. And of course they can use some of that money to pay in a new opponent to come play them in 26 to 27. But Tennessee does not currently have many Power 5 opponents on the books for future years. They do have a meeting with West Virginia in Charlotte set for 2028. They have a home-and-home schedule with Washington in 29 and 30. And, of course, in their opener this coming season, they will face Syracuse in Atlanta to open the season. Former Tennessee assistant and current UCF head coach Alex Golesh has already publicly indicated an interest in playing the Vols. So we'll see if we get a Tennessee USF series. Now, a few other notes on Tennessee. They promoted Chop Harbin to outside linebackers coach. They promoted special teams analyst Evan Crabtree to be their special teams coordinator. And they're hiring veteran special teams coach John Bonamago. And they reached agreements with two of their returning coaches. DB's coach Willie Martinez gets a 2-year extension, will continue to make over $500,000 a year. And strength coach Kurt Schmidt receiving a 1-year deal that will pay him $475K. Martinez and Schmidt both worked on expiring deals last year. And Tennessee also last month announced a new 3-year deal with DC Tim Banks. He'll be paid $2.1 million a year as the Vols defensive coordinator and defensive head coach. Quick note on the Vols. We'll talk with Eric Kane later this week. We'll do a little bit of a Vols preview for the spring. In other news, over at Alabama, Kalen DeBoer bringing in a former staffer with whom he has worked with before at Washington. Tyler Hughes is now listed as football analyst on the Alabama football staff directory. He worked in quality control for the offense at Washington under DeBoer in 2023 before going to the New England Patriots last year, where he coached their wide receivers under Gerard Mayo. But prior to his time at Washington, he spent time with the New England Patriots from 2020 to 2023. But Hughes will reunite with Alabama OC Ryan Grubb and assistants Nick Sheridan, Jamarcus Shepard, Courtney Morgan. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of guys that came with DeBoer over from Washington. So a lot of reunion there from a lot of those guys that were at Washington together. All right, another SEC football nugget. Paul Feinbaum criticizing the college football committee and, this talk at least of possible automatic bids. Feinbaum saying on ESPN a few days ago, they're completely wrong about guaranteeing bids. He said, even SEC fans are calling into my show saying they don't like it. There's something inherently wrong about stacking the deck before the season. I think it's a bad move right now. Feinbaum also pointed out in both leagues, particularly the Big Ten, in a given season, there could be a few elite teams who do deserve an automatic bid, but that the third or fourth team that would get the automatic bid probably wouldn't deserve it because the conference isn't deep enough or wasn't deep enough. So that's just one of those rumors out there that SEC and Big Ten looking for playoff expansion. If they go to 14 or 16 teams, they would like to have 4 automatic bids each from both conferences. We'll see what happens there. All right, quick baseball nugget. The College World Series odds were updated just a couple of days ago, and LSU, Texas A&M, and Virginia all up there as some of the favorites to possibly win the national championship. Tennessee also in the mix, but if you like any of those teams, LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee, all kind of up there as far as good odds, or not great odds, but favorites in the College World Series. Now, Tony Vitello and Tennessee baseball, they are rolling. On Friday, they beat Samford 5-1. It was the first win of the season for Tennessee. That was not a run rule game, but the final outcome was still the same. Vols were undefeated. And with the win, Tony Vitello got his 300th all-time victory, already the third winningest coach in program history. He becomes the fastest to reach 300 wins by a wide margin. It was his 412th game as a coach, but he blows past Rod Delmonico, who got his 300th win in his 501st game he coached. And Vitello joins Delmonico and Bill Wright as the only other head coaches with the Vols to reach 300 career wins. So Tony Vitello and Tennessee doing their thing. We'll also mix in some SEC baseball nuggets as we see fit over the next couple of weeks. Because I was watching basketball. I had basketball games on TV on Saturday. I had baseball games. I had softball games. We were watching it all. And it was women's basketball on Sunday. Watched Kentucky and LSU. So it was a loaded weekend of sports. Spring sports always loaded with so much action going on. Hey, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Don't wait for March. Be the most informed college basketball fan now. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys tomorrow.